Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you enjoy heartfelt real-life stories. Also, we'd love to know, which cities are you watching us from? Drop it in the comments below. Now, let me share something that happened to me recently, something that completely took me by surprise. I invited my sister's son over for lunch, thinking it would just be a simple family visit, but what he told me afterwards left me completely speechless. It all started on a bright Saturday morning. The sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, spilling onto the wooden floor in golden strips. I had decided to make something comforting for lunch: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh green beans. I liked the idea of creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere, especially because I hadn't seen my nephew, Daniel, in nearly a year. Daniel had always been a quiet, thoughtful kid, but he was in his mid-20s now, and I barely recognized the man he had become. He texted me the day before, saying he'd be in town for work, and asked if he could drop by. Of course, I said yes. I wanted to spend time with him, hear about his life, and maybe offer some advice if he needed it. When he arrived, I was busy plating the food. I heard the knock and opened the door to see him standing there, a little hesitant, a small smile on his face. He looked different, more serious, but there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability that I hadn't noticed before. We hugged, and I could feel a tension in him, like he had been holding something back. We sat down at the kitchen table, the air filled with the aroma of rosemary and garlic from the chicken. Conversation started slowly, the usual small talk about work and family. But then, as we were clearing our plates, Daniel leaned back in his chair and looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach tighten. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Something I haven't told anyone else." I paused, unsure how to respond. My heart was pounding because I could sense that this wasn't about trivial news or casual confessions. There was a weight to his words, an intensity that drew me in. I nodded, urging him gently to continue. He took a deep breath and then began. His words were cautious at first, as if he were testing the waters. But gradually they poured out, words about struggles I had no idea he was facing, feelings of isolation despite being surrounded by people, and doubts about himself that he had carried in silence for years. I listened, utterly captivated, feeling an unexpected closeness forming between us. By the time he finished, I was speechless, not because of shock, but because of the depth of trust he had placed in me. I reached across the table, gently squeezing his hand, and told him how proud I was that he could be so honest, that sharing his feelings didn't make him weak. It made him strong. That afternoon, our lunch transformed from a simple meal into something profound. We laughed, we reminisced, and we even cried a little. I realized then that these moments, these unexpected, intimate confessions, were what truly connected us. I had thought I knew my nephew well, but now I saw him in a completely new light. By the time he left, the sun had begun to set, casting a warm orange glow across the kitchen. I watched him walk to his car, feeling a mix of emotions: pride, concern, and a deep sense of gratitude for the bond we had strengthened in just a few hours. That day taught me that sometimes the most ordinary moments, a shared meal, a quiet conversation, can become unforgettable when someone chooses to reveal their true self. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about our lunch. There was something about the honesty in Daniel's words that lingered in my mind, like a melody you can't quite shake. I found myself texting him more than usual, just checking in, making sure he was okay. He replied quickly, but there was a hesitance in his messages, the kind that made me wonder what else he was holding back. A week later, Daniel called me. His voice sounded quieter than usual, almost hesitant. "Do you want to come over? I mean, I could use some company," he said. I agreed immediately. I wanted to see him again, not just as a family member, but as someone who had entrusted me with a piece of his heart. When I arrived, his apartment felt different from what I remembered. The walls were lined with books, soft lighting cast a warm glow, and there was a small aroma of coffee lingering in the air. It was cozy, but it had an underlying tension, like he was waiting for me to notice something he couldn't say out loud. We settled into his living room, and he offered me a cup of tea. I could tell he had been nervous. His hands trembled slightly as he handed me the cup. I smiled at him, hoping to ease the tension. "You don't have to be nervous with me, Daniel," I said softly. He laughed, but it was brief, like a candle flickering in the wind. For a while, we just talked about ordinary things: his work, my latest projects, small updates about family. But slowly, the conversation began to shift. He leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling, as if searching for the right words. "I don't really know how to explain this," he admitted. "It's like I've been carrying this weight, and I don't know anyone I can really share it with." I reached out and touched his arm gently. "You can share it with me," I said. "I want to understand." His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a vulnerability so raw that it took my breath away. He talked about pressures at work, personal doubts, and fears he hadn't voiced to anyone else. There were moments where he paused, swallowed hard, and looked down at his hands, as if afraid of what might happen if he truly opened up. I didn't rush him. I just listened, letting him know with my presence that it was safe to speak. Then something shifted. The air between us seemed charged, not with anything inappropriate, but with an intimacy that went beyond simple family ties. I realized that this moment, this quiet, unguarded sharing, was forging a connection I had never experienced with him before. It was tender, protective, and profoundly emotional. I felt my heart swell with compassion and pride. At one point, he laughed quietly, a sound that seemed to release some of the tension he'd been carrying. "I don't know why I'm telling you all this," he said, smiling faintly. "Maybe because I trust you more than anyone else." And that was it. Those words, that simple admission, changed everything. I realized that what we were building was more than a lunch conversation or a casual visit. It was trust, respect, and a bond that could hold even the heaviest truths without breaking. By the time I left, the evening sky was a deep indigo dotted with stars. Daniel walked me to the door, and I noticed how different he seemed, lighter somehow, as if the act of speaking aloud had relieved him of some invisible burden. I drove home slowly, my mind racing, replaying his words, his expressions, the quiet moments between sentences. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how life can surprise you with the connections you least expect. Who would have thought that inviting my nephew for lunch could lead to such a deeply personal revelation, a quiet moment of mutual understanding and emotional closeness? It was a reminder that sometimes the people we think we know best can still teach us something profound about trust, empathy, and the human heart. A few days after that evening, I found myself thinking about Daniel more than usual. There was a lingering sense of closeness that I couldn't shake, not romantic, not in any way inappropriate, but profound and unexpected. It was the kind of connection that makes you stop and really pay attention to another person, to their struggles, their fears, and their heart. Daniel called me that Friday afternoon. His voice was hesitant at first, like he was weighing every word before speaking. "Would you like to come over again? I've been thinking, and I feel like I need to talk some more." Without hesitation, I agreed. When I arrived at his apartment, the sun was beginning to dip behind the buildings, casting a golden glow through the windows. The soft light made everything feel intimate, cozy, and somehow safe. Daniel greeted me with a quiet smile, and we settled into the couch again, cups of tea in hand. There was a calmness to the room, but beneath it, I sensed a tension, the kind that comes when someone is ready to reveal a part of themselves they've kept hidden for too long. He started speaking, hesitantly at first, about things he had never shared with anyone, fears, regrets, and deeply personal moments from his past. His voice occasionally trembled, and he looked down at his hands, twisting them nervously. I could feel his vulnerability like a physical presence, and it stirred something deep within me, a desire to offer comfort, understanding, and unwavering support. I don't know if I've ever felt truly seen, he said softly. Even with family, I feel like there's this wall, and I keep it up because I don't want to be judged. I reached over and placed my hand over his. Daniel, you don't have to worry about that with me. I want to see you, all of you, the fears, the doubts, everything. You're not alone. He looked up at me then, and for a long moment I felt the weight of his gaze. There was a quiet intensity there, not just in what he was saying, but in the trust he was placing in me. It was powerful and almost overwhelming. I realized that this moment wasn't just about him opening up. It was about the bond we had quietly built over these past few visits. It was mutual, real, and deeply emotional. We sat in silence for a while, just holding that space. The light shifted as the sun set, bathing the room in a soft orange-pink hue. There was a calmness, a sense of understanding, and a shared respect that didn't require words. I could feel that this connection, this emotional intimacy, was something rare, the kind of bond that transforms ordinary relationships into something extraordinary. Then, quietly, almost as if testing the waters, Daniel said, I feel like I can be myself with you. I don't have to pretend. I squeezed his hand gently. That's all I want, Daniel. For you to be yourself. You deserve that, and I'm proud of you for trusting me enough to do it. There was a pause, a shared breath between us, heavy with emotion but light with relief. In that moment, I understood that our relationship had shifted, not in a way that needed labels, but in a way that was profound and unbreakable. We were connected through trust, empathy, and a rare, deep respect for one another. By the time I left that evening, the city lights had flickered on outside, and I felt an unexpected warmth in my chest. Driving home, I reflected on how life has a way of surprising you, that sometimes the simplest gestures, like inviting someone for lunch, can lead to the most extraordinary emotional discoveries. That night, I felt a profound gratitude for the trust Daniel had placed in me and for the quiet, unspoken bond that had grown between us. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I realized just how much Daniel's visits had changed me. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, sunlight spilling across the living room, thinking about the past few weeks. Each conversation, each shared moment had left a mark, a deeper understanding of him, yes, but also a new awareness of myself. I called him that morning, something I hadn't done lightly before. Want to come over for lunch again? I asked. His pause on the other end of the line felt like the universe holding its breath, and then he laughed softly. I'd like that. When he arrived, I noticed immediately how different he seemed, lighter, more at ease. There was still a hint of hesitancy in his movements, but it was tempered by confidence, a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. We prepared a simple meal together: fresh salad, baked salmon, and homemade bread. The kitchen was warm with sunlight and the smell of garlic and herbs, and the casual rhythm of cooking side by side made the space feel intimate without words. We ate, talked, and laughed. The earlier tension that had hovered around us was gone, replaced by a gentle familiarity and comfort. And then, as we cleared the table, Daniel spoke, quieter this time, but with a certainty that caught me off guard. I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about trust, about being yourself, he said, and I realized I feel stronger because I let myself be honest with you, not just about my struggles, but about everything I've been holding inside. I reached for his hand instinctively, squeezing it gently. Daniel, that's all I ever wanted for you, to know that you don't have to carry everything alone. He smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and for the first time I felt a sense of closure, not in the sense that things had ended, but in the sense that something meaningful had fully blossomed between us. It was a bond built on honesty, respect, and emotional courage, something rare, something I knew I would carry with me for the rest of my life. As the afternoon waned, sunlight fading into warm twilight, we sat quietly, simply enjoying each other's presence. There was no need for forced conversation or dramatic revelations. The quiet itself felt like understanding. I realized that these moments, small, sincere, and shared, were what mattered most. Watching him leave that evening, I felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. Pride in the person he was becoming and gratitude for the trust he had given me. Life had a way of surprising us when we least expected it, in a simple lunch invitation, in a heartfelt conversation, in the courage to be truly seen. Driving home, I reflected on everything that had happened. I understood now that the closeness I felt with Daniel wasn't something fleeting or superficial. It was something enduring, rooted in honesty, respect, and a mutual willingness to open our hearts. And I felt a profound sense of growth in myself too, a recognition that being present, being patient, and being compassionate could transform ordinary moments into something extraordinary. That day, I learned that the most meaningful connections often appear when you least expect them. Sometimes, all it takes is a shared meal, a quiet conversation, and the courage to truly see another person. And in doing so, you might just discover a deeper understanding of yourself along the way.